So then we'll see. So everybody sees. Hey, y'all. Oh, my gosh. I want to just, before we start this, whew, I'm a little sentimental. I've been getting all these amazing messages and texts, like folks just giving great feedback. I'm so grateful that y'all are enjoying today. And, please make sure to continue sending us messages while you're in your spaces. Feel free to take screenshots or, little recordings, any type of pictures. Tag us at Coco Coalition on Instagram. We also have Facebook. You can tag the speakers so that they can repost stuff. Also, if you can use the hashtag 2020 Coco Conference, that's COCO Conference, we'd appreciate it. Super grateful. So thank y'all for being here. Very excited about this panel that we have. Two of the ladies, Mary and Felicia. We did a Sis Get in Your Bag series earlier this year, and people really enjoyed it. So we were like, okay, we're definitely going to bring it back for the Coco Conference. So also excited to have Njadeka here today. These women are super powerful. You can click on their icons to get their bios so you can get more information about them. But today, we have an hour and we're going to really be focusing on their journeys. We're going to be talking about like the barriers that keeps people from getting to the place of achieving financial freedom and just being able to like build wealth. And they're going to be sharing nuggets, resources, tips, all the stuff, and maybe how you can get to that place. So I'm super excited. Y'all welcome Mary and Jamaica and Felicia, y'all. Hey. Also, all of you, just want to remind you, please, use the chat. I'm really big with chat. So if you like a or like a hey, like a oh yes or no or what did that mean? Like please, like so used to having in-person events. So I need that interaction. Y'all just drop, even if it's ABCD. Go Black women, like just go ahead and drop it in there. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in there. As we're going through the questions, we will definitely answer your questions. As we're going through the questions that I have for them, my apologies, we will answer your questions. Okay. So we're going to start off talking about relationship with money. So for each of you, I would love for you to share, what do you feel like shaped your relationship with money, and how did you get to where you are today? So let's go ahead and start with Mary.
Okay, so my relationship with money, if I'm being very honest and transparent and vulnerable with this, to me, money represented freedom and security. It still does. I grew up in not necessarily the best household. I didn't really have the best childhood in terms of just the way that I was raised. And my parents had split when they were young, and I, grew up as a kid on welfare, and dealing with that insecurity financially really pushed something into me of where I had always had this fear of, not being able to have enough money to do things, or being afraid of not having enough money to pay for like necessities or things, I would feel very guilty asking my mom or anyone for money, like for things that I even needed. And, that was rooted in just neglecting things that I had experienced growing up. And then even when I got older, I had a stepfather who was, he was verbally abusive, and he would say things to me like I wasn't going to be anybody or be anything. And when I became a young adult, I really had this thing in my head of, okay, I want to make as much money as possible so I can show him that I'm successful and that I don't need him and I can do these things by myself. And so for me, it really put me into this thing of where I was trying to make money and it was trying to fill something in me that couldn't be filled with money, right? And it kind of got me into this very materialistic, I think, mindset of trying to prove that I was okay and that I had enough things to be okay, and to make me feel safe. And then, I had to like deprogram myself from all of that. I think a big turning point for me was when I had traveled abroad to Ghana and I studied abroad there for a period. And I felt no desire or need to shop or buy things. And I was like, wow. And I felt happier, once that pressure was relieved. And so, when I came back and then kind of even just digging deeper into that, and then when I got into my career in finance and learning how money can be a trigger, it can really trigger certain things in you that, you haven't dealt with. And that can cause a lot of problems. That can create a lot of debt. It can create, the opposite where you don't even enjoy your money, where you feel guilt around it. And it's just a lot of toxicity. So, it's been a journey for me. I'm in a much healthier space when it comes to money, and not associating it with my own worth as an individual, but seeing it more so as something that is like an add-on for me. It helps me to do the things that I want to do in life, but even if I don't have it, I'm still okay. It doesn't define me the way that it used to.
Ooh, that's powerful. Thank you so much for that. And Jesse said, I can relate to that. And I appreciate that. And that's why I want to start with this question, because I want y'all to know, like, they giving out gems, but each of them have had their own journey, right? So thank you so much for that, Mary. What about you, Felicia?
So for me, it's been failure, right? Failure multiple times. And I had to really come to terms with my failures in regards to money and ask myself, what keeps putting me in this position to where I am living paycheck to paycheck, having to rely or depend on others, staying in relationships for the sake of being able to take care of my needs. And after giving it some serious thought, going into some really deep prayer, I come to find out that it was because I didn't have any goals. I didn't have a budget. I didn't have my priorities in order. I was into instant gratification. I had an issue with entitlement, right? I work hard, I deserve this. And so with that, it came by any means necessary. Even if I knew that my priorities weren't in order, if I felt like I deserved a specific item, then I was going to get it and worry about it later. And then ultimately, it came down to contentment, not being content with what I had, not taking the time to appreciate what God had blessed me with and steady looking for more. Non-contentment or not being content. And then just overall greed, right? How many different shoes I had. I started finding out that I had bought 2, 3 of the same shoe, right? And so not being organized, not decluttering, not making sure that my closet visually represented everything that I had, realizing that I had clothes with tags on them that I still hadn't worn, but yet continually told myself that I had nothing to wear. And then I was just broken. I was broken. And then I went through a divorce. And with that divorce, my husband took away all my money. When I say all of it, he took all of it. And I was angry. I wanted to do things. I wanted to make sure I got my money back and what I felt I was entitled to. And I had a conversation with my mom. And my mom is successful in her own right. She has her own story, but she was always a resource for me. But my mom said, Felicia, the worst thing that you can do is leave him the F alone. And that for me was powerful and enough. I went back to school at 36. I went back to school at 36, got my bachelor's and my master's, and decided at that time that I was going to get a job that made 6 figures. Whenever the professors would ask me in class, what do you want to do, or what are you going to do with your degree? And I would just say, make 6 figures, make 6 figures. Well, then I made 6 figures and then realized that I was spending as much as I made. So I will touch on that later. But sometimes money is not the answer. right? It's our mindset for our money. It's budgeting. It's telling our money what to do and where to go versus being reactive and looking at our bank statement and wondering, what the hell happened to my money?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow, right? Yes, with the snaps. Okay, can we get some virtual snaps? Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much. And Jadeka, your video's going in and out, sis, but I'm sure that we can hear you. But yeah, so the question is, what shaped your relationship with money, and how did you get to where you are today?
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. At least you can hear me. All right. So, you know, growing up, so I'm a first generation Nigerian American, and growing up, it's interesting as I'm listening to you all, because if I went first, I wouldn't have answered it like that. But as you guys are going into how you went into, I'm like, oh, okay. It made me, I had to think about it. So if anybody, I didn't grow up obviously in Nigeria, but the same spirit came with my parents. And so I learned my relationship with money obviously came from my parents. I have a mother who is extremely disciplined. I have a father, not so much. Okay. But one of the things that I took from them is hustle. Is just always have to hustle for money. You always need to be there. I took not having one stream has never been normal to me, because I never saw them with one stream, and I didn't realize that until I got older. They always were doing multiple things, and then when I go back to Nigeria, I'm like, oh, that's where that comes from. That always kind of grinding to go, but sometimes that also leads to an insatiable, thing that you're achieving, because okay, well, once you get it, then what, right? I grew up in a household where it's a 2-parent household. I grew up in a household of financial creativity. So one of the reasons why multiple streams had to be there was because one wasn't cutting it. And I grew up in a time, I'm sure maybe others have as well, where in the 3rd grade, 4th grade, you were walking home by yourself. Your parents weren't home when you got to the house. Right nowadays, I wouldn't even let my 14-year-old niece walk home by herself, let alone a 4th grader, right? But it was a different time, and so we had to really kind of fend for ourselves. So creativity. I grew up in a financially creative household. I grew up in a household, and as I think about it, Tiffany, I think you and I were talking about this, and I said, I think I might have been early high school when my mom said, how would you feel if we lost the house? And I said, now as an adult, I say to myself, why would you tell a child that? The burden that has, but I think that one of the things that it did was it did kind of create an anxiety sometimes around finances, right? We've seen different things where people say, we need to address that, like the anxieties that people have around spending and, and if it's going to be enough. And as I kind of got older, that happened, or I just kind of started to recognize that more. But I think I learned some discipline as I've gotten older, learned discipline from my mom for sure, learned entrepreneurship from both of my parents. And, moving into the financial world, just learning that those who struggle the most teach it the best. So
like that.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Love that. Since all of you kind of talked about this in some aspect, I love this question that Anitra asked. What tips do you have for transitioning from a scarcity money mindset to an abundance money mindset? Now, I just want to pose it because we actually do have a question that is very related to that. So I just kind of want you to keep that in mind. Thank you, Anitra, sis. That's such a great question. So based off what you've shared, I imagine that you all have like your own personal philosophies around like wealth building, or what financial freedom look like. So I would love to know, and for you, maybe it's the same definition, maybe it's different definitions, but I would love to know your definition or your beliefs around wealth building and financial freedom. Let's go ahead and start with Felicia. You're mute, sis. You're mute, sis.
I'm sorry, my dog is barking.
Okay.
So wealth building for me is not just the cash flow of it, but additional assets in regards to that. To me, my thought process is investments into real estate are always great as terms of wealth that can be passed from generation to generation. So how do you get to that point to where you can start to not only buy the home, your single family home, but my thing was to start with investment properties, right? To start with buying an investment property prior to a single family home, especially if you are a single parent or a woman trying to start and make it on your own. A duplex is that great first start investment that I suggest that people do. It allows you to rent out the other side of the duplex while indeed paying for partially offsetting your expenses of your side of the home, whether it's a duplex, threeplex, but I strongly suggest going that route. So in terms of getting that cash flow going, my thing is I hate debt. I had to learn that myself. Like, to be free from debt, credit card debt, how do you get that? You start paying it. I don't care if you use what they call the snowball method or the DDP method, but opening up your mail, facing those creditors, paying for those things. I'm not a proponent of get rich quick or delete everything off your credit report and start fresh and new, because your habit is not going to change. Even if you go the slick way and you pay somebody to remove all that stuff off your credit, you're just going to rebound and do the same thing again. But if you actually do the work, write those letters, change your mindset, change your spending, and get a budget. As African Americans, we don't like budgets, right? We don't like to be proactive with our money and tell our money what to do. And then we end up having more month than money, right? So at the end of the month, if you don't have enough money, or if you're living paycheck to paycheck, something is wrong with your outcome. And it's probably your outcome that's the problem versus your income. So I would say focus on facing where you are, being realistic with yourself, stop lying to yourself, open your mail, talk to your creditors, order your credit report, pay down your debt, get yourself in a position to where you can start having more money than month. My other thing in terms of wealth building is to be a giver. I am a proponent of tithing. Regardless if you feel like the church is going to do something with it, or if you don't trust the pastor, change the church. If you don't feel that church is the place where your money should go, then find a charity. But make sure that you have an open heart in giving, and because God is putting you in a position, the more wealth you build, the more you should be in a position to give and help others.
Yes, I love that. And I would like to say Coco is a 501c3.
Right.
So donations are tax deductible. You can set up monthly payments. You can do one-time payments. You just go to cococoalition.org.
Yes, we should definitely increase our giving, because I promise you it comes back to you tenfold.
I think that's so great. And so before I ask the other ladies, what is your personal definition to the phrase financial freedom? Like, what does that mean for you? Oh, sorry, for Felicia. Sorry, my bad.
I'm sorry. What was the question?
So I want to know. So I want to ask all of y'all, what your outlook on wealth building, but also for you personally, what would be your definition of financial freedom?
So financial freedom to me would be being in a position to where I can give freely, being in a position to where I am debt free, and being in a position to where I continue to be on the road of prosperity. What does that mean? That I'm continually looking for opportunity to build wealth. not necessarily from corporate America, because some people are entrepreneurs. I love you all, but I'm just the person that prefers to have a paycheck guarantee every 2 weeks. That's not for everybody, but that's just what I prefer to have. But in addition to that, I do have hustles. As Dika mentioned, having that hustle mentality and making sure that you're continually building wealth. And then most importantly, making sure that when I decide to buy something, I can afford it. That's what financial freedom means to me, that I'm not buying you on credit and that I can actually afford it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, Mary, you're next. So, if you could share with us your beliefs around wealth building, and kind of same thing that Felicia did, sharing any like tools that you feel like are really important for wealth building, and any backgrounds, challenges, advantages around it, etc.
Yeah. So, I think one to start off with, I'll just describe what financial freedom is to me. And financial freedom to me is me feeling free to do what I want to do. So if I want to leave my job because I'm tired of whatever's going on, I can do that. I don't feel trapped. If I want to leave my relationship because I don't want to deal with it anymore, I can do that because I don't feel trapped. If I want to take care of my parents or do something for other people, that I see that are hurting, I can do that without stress, or any type of fear, because I have the financial freedom to do so. So that's really what it represents to me. And I think that also goes into, my strategy, because I think I'm very different from Felicia in the sense of like, I'm actually I think not that I discourage my clients or people to go for real estate, but I always tell people to take a step back and question why they're doing it at that moment in time. Because I've seen a lot of people invest in real estate and it not be the best thing for them at the end of the day. And I think that as African Americans, we were kept out of the home equity business for generations. There were a lot of things in front of us that prevented us from building wealth that way. And it was a primary way of building wealth for our grandparents in particular. But now when you take a look at like home prices, and if you're buying your first home, the point of where they're valued, I mean, there's a lot of people that have houses that are underwater right now from 2008 still, so you have to be very mindful when it comes to purchasing property. And then two, also you have to ask yourself, for me, because freedom is so important. And my parents, my mom and my stepdad did have rental properties. That was like another job. And, for me, I'm trying to fat fire one day. I don't want no job. So home, buying properties, like I don't want to have a property manager. Like I'm not trying to do all that. So for me, it's all about keeping it simple. And for me, when I've done the numbers on it, if you invest early and often, and I think that is the biggest thing within our community, is that we don't invest as early as other communities do. And whether that is, starting with investing in someone's business and getting some money back from that potentially, or investing in the stock market, we don't understand that concept, or it's not introduced to us at an early age. And so, I think about, when I have children, if God, blesses me with the ability to do so, I think about what would I do to change for them the financial legacy that I inherited, right? Like what was I taught that was wrong that I would make differently? And I would say, when I have a kid, when they get their first job, hey, guess what? You can open up a Roth, or you can get an investment account and to start putting money aside, every month, every year, because the earlier you start, the less money you have to save. And I think that by getting into the mindset of paying yourself first, when you get your paycheck, put money aside for you. To me, that's also self-care, right? Because you are paying yourself and investing in yourself for the future and saying, I'm going to prioritize me over everything else. And when you start prioritizing yourself, then you start treating yourself better. And part of treating yourself better is, I'm not going to go and max out this credit card because that's not treating yourself. You're not being kind to yourself when you go and max out your credit card. If you go and do, insane shopping trips or do trips that you can't afford, it may feel good in that moment. But when you get home and you look at that bill and you say, man, I can't, it's kind of tight until the end of the month. I got to wait till next payday for this paycheck. It doesn't feel good. And so for me, when it comes to about financial wellness and self-love and just building wealth, it all starts with starting with you. So what makes me feel good is knowing that if shit hits the fan, I can afford to take care of myself, right? We all want that type of security. It's one of the fundamental needs as a human is to feel secure, right? To have a sense of security and safety. And so when I think about, and I say, give people advice, my clients, I say, okay, let's start with your budget. I go through a budget exercise with all of my new clients. How much are you saving each month? How much are you investing outside of your 401k? Some people, it blows my mind. I've had some clients come to me making, $300,000 a year for a while. And all they did was put money in their 401k. And they didn't know what else to do with the rest of their money. And I'm just like, so you just spent it? Like, you didn't, what do you do with it, right? And then, and even if it's not that extreme, but there's a lot of people who don't think about that outside of their 401k. And so, I would just say, think about how you want to live your life, to the life you want to live, and then, work yourself backwards from that. So I say, okay, I want to be retired by this point in time. So I need to have X amount of money. I also know I like nice things. So I need to make X amount of years so I can do what I want to do and also have enough money to save. I need to make X amount of money because I know I need to save outside of my 401k X number of dollars each month. And to me, when you align it with that, you're now aligning your actions with a purpose. And it's a purpose that is true to you and who you are, right? Because you say, hey, I don't want to work past this date. I want to have enough money for this, enough money for that. And you're not punishing yourself, living like a pauper lifestyle. And so I see a question in there, when you don't have a surplus of cash. And this, I think, goes with Felicia was saying. I'm a big advocate of finding side hustles. Finding multiple streams of income, we all have a talent or a skill. And, even if you don't want to do that, finding a job that pays you what you're worth, right? If you really love your career and you love what you do, maybe you need to go back to school and get another certificate or whatever, or designation so you can get paid more. Maybe you need to step outside your comfort zone and change jobs so you can get more money. And I know that is even coming from a place of privilege to be able to say that you have that option, but I do think that you have more options available to you than you think. Okay, so don't feel trapped in your situation. You want to empower yourself to say, let me explore and think outside the box and see other things that I can do. And sometimes it's selling things that you have. Sometimes it's downsizing and going into a smaller home so that way you have more cash flow. Are you living within your means or are you trying to keep up with the Joneses, right? Poshmark is a great place to sell stuff. I've sold a lot of clothes on Poshmark. I'm a person that, I used to really have this as an issue, but whenever I would feel bad about myself, I would go shopping. And it took a while for me to click that that's what I was doing, but I would just do a binge shopping spree. I have all these boxes coming to my house weeks later. Don't know what the hell. I don't remember everything that I bought. And I would be like, dang, I don't know what it is. And I'm like, okay, and I would buy 2 of the same shirt because I couldn't decide on the color, right? I'm a typical Gemini in that way. I'm like, oh, I like both. So these are areas of self-control, and I think once you start kind of realizing what am I spending, what am I doing, then you can say, okay, I'm really not as poor. I hate using that term, but I'm really not lacking as much as I thought I did. I'm just using in excess. I'm not being a good steward of what's been given to me. So then you go, okay, fix that. Now you can say, okay, well, do I need to make more money? How can I make more money? Do I need to get a new job? Do I have a passion that I can monetize? These are things you can think about, and you have a lot of options. So, yeah.
Well, if I can just really respond really quickly to the real estate point, I am not saying do not invest. I invest as well. I invest in stocks. I have a 401k and I have IRA. So by no means investing in real estate is that. My thought process when it comes to real estate is that I do not want to have a house note or pay rent once I retire. My thing was to find a house that I would want to live in, to pay off, in 20 to 25 years so that when I do retire, I don't have to worry about a house note. So if that's not what your goal is, I'm not saying make a bad investment in real estate. I'm not saying buy something to where it doesn't make sense financially. But of course, if you're looking for a home, it makes sense to me. And ultimately, I don't know your situation, but in advice wise, to buy an investment property before you purchase your first single family home. That's just another way to offset your expenses while you're still trying to build your nest. That's all.
And I guess to clarify on that point too, and I'll be really brief because I know I'm a rambler. I'm not saying don't buy property, because I definitely think that, you know, when you get ready to retire, you should have a home that you're in that's paid off. You don't need that house note during retirement if at all possible. You can swing it sometimes, and it depends on your financial plan. But what I've seen a lot of is people making a rush to invest and lock their money up and like, you know, 300,000 properties, and you want to be more thoughtful about it. I know a lot of times people can get encouraged by like family members, especially older people in the family. Oh, go buy a home, once you're making good money. But that's
and they're not ready. And they're not ready.
Yeah.
That's
not always the best decision. So I don't
discourage
people from it. I just say you should be very thoughtful about it and not jump into it. But I completely agree.
Well, I mean, and the question is like, what are the tools that you prefer for wealth building, right? So it's totally okay that people have different, different opinions, and that's why I have the three of y'all on, because you're in the industry or impacted by finance in different ways. So just be mindful of that, y'all. Like everybody kind of like moves different, right? But we're talking about wealth building and financial freedom. So thank you so much. And Jadeka, so what about you? So the question is, what is your idea of financial freedom? Also, like, what perspectives do you have around wealth building? What are the tools that you, have a passion around, or, that you support people around, that you would like to, be able to share with the folks?
So financial freedom to me is money freedom and time freedom. It is the ability to do what I want, when I want, in the way that I want, for who that I want, and that twice over, in fact. Okay, that is financial freedom to me, twice over. Okay, you can only do it once, it ain't financial freedom. No, but because it might have been a fluke. We go to, or with my clients, I call it the sexy stuff. Okay. Everybody wants to go to the sexy stuff. The sexy stuff is kind of like, the investment side. Because at the end of the day, wealth building is about, adding assets and everything. So whether we're talking about your stock portfolio, other types of investments that you have, like securities investments, whether we're talking about real estate, whether we're talking about starting a business, whatever that might look like for a person, we have that conversation. But there's a conversation that I got to have before that, right? And this is a part of wealth building too. And sometimes it's more automatic for other communities, more so than it is for us. And one of what that is I have to build kind of that foundation out. And that foundation, and it's not mine, I have not copywritten it, but I go over the 6 L's, all right? I go over the 6 L's with people. This is a part of my planning, right? That I do with folks.
Yeah.
So the 6 L's. So the first L is liquidity. All right. It's liquidity. If something happened and you needed cash immediately, how and where how quickly and where are you going to get it? Right. So that does go into budgeting, right? And beyond just the fixed budgeting and, okay, what are the fixed expenses I have? What are my variable expenses? Right. Because we have to address spending. How are my spending habits? Somebody said it, right? What are my habits? I got to address that. What are my variable spending? So it goes over budgets, balance sheets, right? We got to address that because you got to add assets and not just liabilities to things. We know how to add liabilities very well to things, right? Income statements, right? Cash flow. Because there's, at the end of the day, even with the budget, there's only so much restriction budgeting that you can do. There's only so much that you can do. At some point, you have to bring in additional income or cash flow. You have to bring that to the table. So that's the first L, is liquidity. The second one is leverage. Leverage is your ability to obtain things with what you have, right? So that goes into credit, that goes into debt, right? And addressing both of those things for you, whether you got to rebuild it, whether you got to build it, whether you got to eliminate, right? Just like you said, snowball, avalanche, whichever one, right? Whichever one makes the most sense. The third thing is loss of income. It's loss of income. The major asset that everybody on here, the main asset that you all have or you bring is your ability to bring in income. Your ability to bring in income is your primary asset, right? And so, and you expand that with the different things that you do. So loss of income. So it's addressing that. So I talk to folks about, right, okay, we got to talk about short-term disability, long-term disability, long-term care, things like that. That's just foundational stuff. The fourth L is loss of life. I can't talk to you about wealth building with all these without the 6 in there. Because for me, you're building on sand. You are building your wealth on sand. If something happens, it will have to stop. Your building will have to stop. So loss of life. So loss of life is different types of right? Life insurances. The fifth one is longevity, and that's where kind of retirement savings. Okay, when I retire, how long will I even be able to live the way that I want to live? Right. So we have to assess that, whatever that might look like, whether it's a 401k, 403b, annuities, whatever that might look like. We'll just figure it out. And the sixth thing, the 6L is legacy. Right. That's you can buy a house all you want, but if you don't have a trust, if that thing ain't in a trust, if you don't have a will, you're gonna lose it anyways. You're gonna lose it anyways. And the effort that your mom or your grandma or whoever put in to even begin to build that up, it's gonna get lost. You have to start over, right? So legacy, so putting things together, estate planning, all of that, those different types of things. So that is the foundation for wealth building, and then it gets to the sexy stuff. Yeah, we can talk about stocks, we can talk about options, your investment portfolio, real estate, we can talk about all of that stuff. But I have to do the other stuff first. Sorry. Thanks.
I love that.
Yes, love that too. Hope y'all taking notes.
I did.
Zika, can you type the 6 L's into the chat?
I can. I will. Let me
okay, thank you.
Phone.
Okay. She got a lot of stuff going on. Okay, cool. All right. So next question. What, from your perspective, so Felicia has, she's unique in the group because she has built her own portfolio, right? So I think that especially around like real estate, man, like spends a lot of focus on that. Dika, provides a lot of services for folks, right? So you all might have different perspective, but all of you teach people in some capacity. So I would love to know, what do you think are some of the emotional, mental, or behavioral barriers that often impacts others' relationship with money? And so we can get as specific to, I know it's generalization, but if we can get as specific to Black women as possible, that would be much, much appreciated. So Mary, let's go ahead and start with you.
Could you repeat the question? Because I want to make sure I understand what you're asking.
Yeah. Okay, so what are the emotional, mental, behavior patterns or barriers that often impact others' relationships with money? Okay. Black women.
So I would say that with my Black women clients, that it is a lot of time, like when it comes to emotional barriers, I think this is common for most people, to be honest, though, too, is a fear of loss. So when the market had that pullback, or we went into the recession earlier this year, I had so many people freaking out. And part of my job as a financial advisor is to help you not make a bad decision. And so I had to sit down with them and explain, look, we can't talk. I can't predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen. But we can look at what's happened in the past and what happens when things like this happen. And we can look at fundamentals of companies, and we can look at these factors. And all things point to the market doing what it always does, which is rebounding. Like recessions are healthy. If an economy never has a recession, then it's super hyperinflated. Like it's not good for anyone. You have to have pullbacks. And I think that sometimes it's a lack of understanding of how the market works, of that you will have ups and you will have downs. and that emotional connection to that loss and thinking that it's going to be permanent, but it's only permanent if you make it permanent, which is you sell at that time. That's when you lock it in, you know? I can also say, you know, I think sometimes religion can cause some, you know, different perspectives or feelings about money. I have some clients who are Muslim, and you know, part of, I guess, the Islamic law or tenets is that you can't charge people interest when you give them money, and so that's technically what a bond is, you know. And so finding ways to work around that within their religious beliefs and not being so limited, you know, and thinking, oh, well, I can't do anything like that because, you know, I don't have that option. Like, well, no, there's more options available to you than you think, you know. I would even say, you know, going into Christianity, you have some pastors who teach like this abundance mindset that if you're good, God's going to bless you with a lot of money. And that's a sign of you being a good Christian. And then there's some people who think the opposite, who think that, oh my gosh, I have so much money, I feel guilty now because I should be giving this away. Like I should be living a more humble life. And so trying to find that mid ground, you know, between the two of those ideas can be really hard and really stressful sometimes. You know, and I think that when it comes to mental attitudes around money, you know, I see sometimes that people, and this may even go back to being emotional, but I think sometimes when I see women who are married, who may be the breadwinner in their family, sometimes they feel a little hesitant about sharing their resources with their husband or with their partner. You know, they want to hide some of it because they're afraid of, okay, this relationship ends, they also going to take all my money. It's not something you have to kind of work out. And sometimes I feel like I do play therapist, like couple therapists sometimes with people when one person has an inequity to the other and like what's the power dynamic there. So there's a lot of little things that can impact a lot, right? Like, and I think even going back to a question I saw in the chat about like a scarcity mindset.
Right, and that's why I was saying we're gonna tie it in because it's gonna come up during this. So yeah, the question was, what tips do you have for transitioning from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset?
Yeah, you know, so with a scarcity mindset, you know, I have a client, a Black woman. She makes like 3 times what her husband makes, and she got married at like age 39, so she was a little bit later in life. For her tastes, right? And she's like, you know, I've seen people get divorced, and I know that this may not work out, you know, with him and I. So she had this, and the thing is, the scarcity mindset is such a complicated question to answer because it depends on what are you afraid of, right? So are you afraid of not being able to pay the bills? Are you afraid of going back broke? Are you afraid of, you know, not being able to prove that you have enough, you know? And this woman, my client, her parents died when she was really young. She grew up in foster care. Like her life, I am so impressed by her and what she's overcome to be where she is, you know? And she was afraid of losing it all and going back to this place. So, you know, had to kind of work through that. And I was like, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, you may not have to share it with them. If y'all get divorced, he's going to get it anyways. I was like, we can put in a trust to make sure it goes to your son. You know, and we can do some little things around that, but let's talk about this fear that you have, because this fear is now stopping you from taking risks that I think is appropriate for your age and for your goals, right? And so sometimes, you know, it's a fear that holds us back from doing things that we need to do. And when it comes to investing, there's always a risk. If anyone tells you there's no risk involved, it's a scam. Yeah. Okay, walk away, report them to someone because that's a scam. There's always risk involved. And I think it's about your confidence that you have and your sense of security that allows you to take certain risks.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, you know, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I think for sure. So just a time check. So we are ending this session at 2:15. So I want to get to both of y'all to share, and then the next question, I just want you to briefly share like maybe 3 resources or tips, and then give folks opportunity to ask maybe like 1 question. So Dika, if you could answer the question like around any emotional, mental, behavioral barriers that you see that, you know, get in the way of folks' relationship with money, and maybe like briefly answering it.
Okay. One is worthiness. And you and I talked about this, right? Us, and this is mindset. It's before you get the money, right? It is, do you believe that you are deserving of the money? Do you believe, and I'm just talking about money wise or assets, things like that. There's more to, you know, to things in it, but we're going to go ahead and talk about the money side. Do you believe that you deserve it? And what are some things that you believe? What are your beliefs around your ability to grow money, to build money, to leave money? So addressing that, just understanding that, like, is your relationship, do certain things when it comes to money, do they make you upset? Do certain things when it comes to money make you intimidated? Does it get you creative, right? Does it make you, you know, turn off, like shut down, you know, depending on what it is. So just really having a conversation and becoming self-aware about what you've learned, what your tape, right? The tape that we all have, just understanding what's your tape, what's playing on your tape, right? As it relates to money. Another thing is, we need to make sure that, you know, in a lot of our communities of color, we don't have as many wealth examples as we can, or even a lot of positive money. I mean, some of us may, and so you know, I'm sure that they exist, but not a lot. And so putting ourselves, one thing I think is a barrier, is that we're not putting ourselves into, whether it's coaching or mentorship or communities of people with that mindset. And so when we're trying to go for something, sometimes we are, I think I posted something that says we're getting constructive criticism from people who haven't constructed anything. And so we have to really be mindful of that, and put yourself in around people that are doing and building what you want to build. The last thing I'll say is, I had a conversation with, when I worked in a wealth advisory firm, I was the only Black woman, let alone Black person in the firm. And I was speaking to the CEO. And one of the things he said was that he sees as a challenge with communities of color is that we say yes too much, and not understanding that because we keep saying yes and we keep giving away and giving, even to family, depends on what family, right? Just hear me out. We keep giving so much that we don't give ourselves time to build. And so it keeps on, so we're just not giving ourselves time to build. So I think that certain things related to that, so just mindset, you know, really working with people or putting yourselves in communities to build, and to grow things. And then, I don't want to say giving too much, but giving too soon.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that black tax is real too.
Wait, this is what I got right here.
Yes.
Well, you can share that resource,
right here, the black tax
at the top. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything that you want to add to that, Felicia? Any mental, emotional, or behavioral barriers that you see impact Black women's relationship with money?
Yeah, so we all have our own bonds that that bondage are connection to being broke, right? So it's like, how do you break the bonds that keep you broke? And on my career side, I am in commercial real estate, and my financial side, I do have an MBA in finance, but I am not a financial advisor. I consider myself to be a financial coach. I lead 3 times a year a financial fast where I have a minimum of 6, mostly women. I've had men graduate, come in, and we do a 21-day financial fast based off of Michelle Singletary's book, The 21-Day Financial Fast. This is not something that I suggest you just pick up the book and try to do on your own. It's definitely something where you will have to have an accountability partner, somebody to keep you from being discouraged of trying to do this 21 days. But within this, we find that we revert back to, as Black women, our sense of entitlement, that we deserve things that we really can't afford, right? And then I talked earlier about contentment, not being content with what God has blessed us with, because one thing that I do know is that if we take care and we respect what God has given us, he tends to give us more, right? It's when we don't have any respect for it and we misuse what we're giving. So the mental part of it all boils down to us really believing of our self-worth and what we're worthy of. So if you don't have that mindset to think that you're more than just material things, if you're not looking into it in terms of the long term, you're stuck with that instant gratification for the now. And the now often leads you down the road of having things that are short term versus long term, like that purse, that shoes, all those things that we buy when we're under emotional distress. Another thing is that as Black communities, we don't really like therapy. We don't like putting people in our business. We don't like getting that psychological help. We don't believe that mental illness is a true illness. We don't believe that your brain can be sick or that your emotions can be sick and that you may need to see a doctor to fix that. So we self-medicate through shopping. Okay. No matter if we know that from the pandemic, it's not even physically going to a store anymore. You're on social media, you're buying things from Amazon all day that you don't even know. And then lastly, I want to talk about is what we have this thing we didn't have maybe when we were growing up. So now we feel like we have to have it. We go to Costco, we buy big bulk bags of whatever, rice, potatoes. You have all these pantries stocked with things, cereals, and all of these items that you aren't even eating, you're throwing away. You go to the market, you don't have a grocery list. You're buying a multitude of things that you say you're going to cook, but then at the end of the week, you're throwing these things away. Then when you look around, you have these blender that has been sitting here that you never use. You have clothes that still have tags on them. You have stuff. You don't even know how much stuff you have. And so this is when I tell all of my class participants that I encourage them to read this book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, Decluttering, Organizing, Not Having a Junk Drawer. It's no reason that if something happened to you, God forbid, and you get hit by a bus today, and we have to come into your house and figure out your house, and we don't have passwords to your account, we don't know what you've done in terms of your insurance. We don't know if you have a will or a living trust. Any of all those business is not taken care of. And you have just stuff everywhere, right? You don't even know how much stuff you have. So I suggest everyone take this opportunity to pick out a closet, clean out that closet. If you have kids, go through your toys before you go spend some more money on Christmas. Look at what your kids already have. Most of the time, they're not even playing with the stuff that you bought a month ago or that you bought during the pandemic. So organization, decluttering, dealing with your mental issues versus shopping, and getting control of your spending habits, focusing on your goals, put them on post-its, make sure your goals are always visible, and try to stick to what ultimately you want to do with your life.
Thank you. Okay, so the question was 3, but if you could just give one resource or tip that you think someone could really benefit from if they were trying to, be on a path of financial freedom. Someone asked, what's the best route to start learning about stock market to become more comfortable with taking risk and investing? So maybe one of y'all want to give a tip around that. Maybe a tip around changing the mindset, maybe a tip around or a resource around real estate. I don't know. But if everybody could just leave one resource or tip, and then I want to take one question.
I could be very simple and sum up what you're going to get from a lot of books about investing, especially if you're doing it yourself, which is to stick with passive investing, a buy and hold strategy for the long term, and invest in ETFs. It sounds cool, friends talking about, buying, this.
What is an ETF?
It is an exchange traded fund. So basically, in the stock market, everyone knows Amazon, Google, Microsoft, right? But you don't have to buy a single share of a company. Whenever you buy a single share of a company, that actually has the most risk because that company could go under and you could lose all of that money that you put in that company, right? But if you buy an ETF, for example, I can use, we'll take Vanguard Technology ETF. That's up like 45% for the year. It has like 300 or 400 companies that it's actually invested in. So what you do when you buy an ETF, these ETFs mirror sectors of the market. So it could be technology, it could be bio, it could be healthcare. You know, there's thousands of them, really. But whenever you buy an ETF, you're basically diversifying your risk amongst all of those different companies, and it creates less risk, and it's a lot simpler for you to get involved in. The biggest thing is when people give you advice on what stocks to buy, they never tell you when to sell. And part of being a good active trader when you're buying single stocks and you're trying to beat the S&P is knowing when to get out. And that's really, really hard to do. So a lot of books that I would recommend to people, you know, they're basically summed up. The advice they give for people who are doing it themselves is to buy an ETF and diversify. So, you know, I would say pick up, you know, any general book about like beginner school diversification, stock market, and you'll understand the importance there of why you need to buy, you know, value, growth, small cap, international, right? These are all different types of sectors in the market, size and style. And, you know, you'll learn about that and that lingo. But I would say, you know, get the Merrill Edge app because I work at Merrill Lynch. And just open up a CMA or a Roth and just buy a share of some random ETF and then just buy more each month. And just once you start doing it, you're going to get more comfortable and you'll get more familiar, but you just have to jump in.
Yeah, thank you. Felicia, what's one tip or resource that you would share?
So my tip is to actually write down all of your debt. I'm not going to ask you to do something that I haven't done. I can tell you that I am completely 100% credit card debt free. So I want you to write down all of your debt, organize your debt on a list from the largest amount to the smallest amount. And I want you to focus on paying off your debt to become credit card debt free, no matter bill free, whatever's on your credit card debt. I just want this to be a year of paying off debt, breaking that bondage that debt holds on so many of us, including those student loans. Let's just get those things paid. And if you're wondering, I don't have money, I will tell you the resources for that are much more plentiful than they were when I was coming up. You guys have Postmates, you guys can do start your own online business on Instagram. There's so many opportunities now that are readily more available than they were when I was starting out. So that's my tip that I want to leave everyone here with today for that.
Thank you. And any of the books or resources that you mentioned, y'all could type them down in the chat box too.
Okay.
Okay. So last 2 minutes, you got it, Njadeka. What's your one tip or resource you want to share? Dika? Oh, maybe we lost her. Okay. Is she there? Maybe not. Okay. So I just want to say thank y'all so much. We're going to be transitioning into the next portion soon. Please feel free to, you know, click on these ladies' icons and their bios are in there. Contact information,
Okay.
and you can be to do that.
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, we have a delay. It's the delay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Dika? Okay. All right. So we didn't get to close with Dika because I think there might be a little bit of delay. But next portion, we're giving y'all 15 minutes if you want to go check out the expo, or you can go in the networking. I'll be in the networking for the next 15 minutes. It just randomly selects. And then we have our last session, and then we'll be doing a little bit more networking and closing for the day. Okie dokie.
All right. I'll see you guys in the networking session.
So we just click on network.
Can you hear me now?
We just click on the networking icon. Just like got it.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Thank you guys.